you can't really have a relationship with a person if you've got walls up.
Exactly.
Or if they have their walls up.
Welcome to the Midweek Motivation Podcast, where we bring practical help for your faith and life. Here's today's episode.
Hey guys, welcome to this week's Midweek Motivation. My name is Jess. I'm one of the pastors here at Westside, and I've got Stacy Romanaggi joining me. Romanaggi. She's a friend and also a child and family counselor, and she's joining us to have a great conversation about healthy households, specifically trust, and how, really, really important trust is to healthy households.
Well, you can't have a relationship without trust, right?
Exactly.
It's the foundation of a healthy relationship.
Yeah, it's the glue that holds families together.
It really is, for sure.
So, I'm so glad that you're here, and I can't wait to have this conversation with you. I know that, you said you're a family counselor, and so you probably have done a lot of study on this and had lots of conversations on the topic of trust. Right. So can you tell us, what insights that you have on trust and its impact on relationships and families?
Sure. Well, without it, you can't have a meaningful connection with a person without trust. And trust allows you to be vulnerable and allows you to open yourself up to the other person. And without fear of being punished or criticized. I mean, you really get to be yourself when you have that trust in a relationship with the other person. And, it allows you to be vulnerable. Yeah. Which, I'm totally repeating myself, I think.
No, you're good. You're good. It does allow you to be vulnerable. I think that we can all probably connect with that on some level. If I don't have the impression that the person that I'm sitting across from has the best interests in mind for me, or that they're, that I'm safe with them. If I don't have that thought, then walls go up. I'm gonna be less willing to open up and share, which is never a pleasant engagement or conversation. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
Well, you can't really have a relationship with a person if you've got walls up. Exactly. Or if they have their walls up.
Exactly. That's huge. So what do you think is the key to turning the tide or taking control of the level of trust that we have in our relationships?
Well, I think it's important for us to have established good boundaries, right? And for the people in our lives to understand that having boundaries in a relationship is really a healthy thing, and it's a loving thing to do. And so, and for you to understand and respect my boundaries, and so that when I say no, it's okay, and when you say no, it's okay. And just respect the amount of access that I'm going to allow somebody to have to me.
Yeah. That's good stuff. That idea of boundaries is it gets a little bit convoluted and a little complicated. I think sometimes it's hard to understand what it actually means to have a boundary. And Pastor Gabe talked about this a little bit too. He talked about the fact that we need to be able to clearly share what our expectations are. And I think that has a lot to do with setting boundaries and being clear about communicating what it is that we need in a relationship for both of your sakes, which I don't think happens as often as it should, really.
Right. No, I would agree with you there too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you are in a healthy relationship and you are, establishing boundaries and you are, sticking to your boundaries, in a healthy relationship, the other person's going to understand. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I respect that. And
how do you
honor it?
How do you coach somebody to set boundaries? Like how would you define a boundary, and how would you coach someone to share a boundary with someone else?
So when I talk with my clients, I use a picture of a home with a fence, right? And the fence is a boundary, right, that you have in your front yard. And I'm not going to let people throw junk over my fence into my yard. Yeah. And so I'm going to protect my yard by not allowing that and keeping toxicity and negative comments and abuse out of my yard, out of my relationship with other people.
That's a great picture. I love that. I think that I think it's really important to, just from my own personal experiences and how I've set boundaries with people, to make sure that when I'm putting that fence up, when I'm setting a boundary, I'm really clear about how I build that with somebody.
And why. And the reason why.
Yep. Yeah. So being real clear and concise on exactly what the expectation is with that person, and being open and honest about that, and then letting them know what it is that is crossing it. Like when you do that, you're crossing this thing that I asked you not to do.
Right.
And I think that like even in my own relationship, I've had experiences where boundaries have been crossed. How do you address that?
Right. Well, and then in turn, knowing the boundaries of other people.
Yeah.
And how much access they're giving of themselves to you, and for them to feel comfortable enough to let you know when you've crossed a boundary.
Yeah.
And you being okay with that and honoring their boundary.
Yeah, yeah. And that's all just conversation, right? Like a conversation and respect, and also benefit of the doubt, I think. You know, at least to a certain extent.
Well, you're probably not going to know you violate a boundary until you do it, right?
Exactly.
So then being open with that person and letting them know, hey, this is how it made me feel. And, moving forward.
Yeah.
Let's handle it this way.
Yeah. And oh my gosh, I'm really sorry. That was unintentional,
Right.
And second chances and all that stuff.
Exactly.
So that's good. Awesome. So Pastor Gabe showed us this amazing tool. And I think that one of the things that he pointed out on Sunday that was really great about this is that when we want to have a healthy household, it really actually starts with us. And we can't take ownership and responsibility for our own trustworthiness unless we can have an honest look at ourselves and measure what that looks like. And so we have here this Healthy Households TrustOMeter, which I think is great.
Yeah.
And really being able to look at ourselves through this lens and gauge ourselves on these 4 things, which he pointed out is just a really great measure of our trustworthiness, because without these things, we can't have trust.
Right.
So the first thing being truthfulness. And how do we measure ourselves against this idea of truthfulness?
Well, I think one thing that comes to mind is accountability. Am I holding myself accountable? When I make a mistake, will I own it? And will I apologize? And will I make amends for that? And then having integrity.
Yeah.
Do I choose courage over comfort? And tackle those tough situations. And again, being willing to say, I made a mistake.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. How can I make amends with you?
Yeah. Yeah. Truthfulness, I love all of that, actually. That falls right in line. Like being able to I have this conversation a lot with people about the idea of confession, really being just using your words to say what actually is. And I think that that's something that we need to be able to do. And, if you're a believer in Christ, you confess to God, what's on your heart and your mind. And we do that because he knows anyway, and also because he forgives us and receives us and helps us to grow through that interaction. I think it's the same when we're working with people, when we're talking to our loved ones and our friends and family. And a lot of time when we run into situations where maybe we feel ashamed about something, it's hard for us to speak the truth of that and to confess those things. But without the willingness to do that, we can't grow and we can't build a deeper relationship and all that. So, man, that's so...
And it's such a great thing to model for your children, right?
No
for you to make a
kidding.
mistake and own up to it in front of your kids.
No kidding.
And you're not brushing it under the carpet. So then they learn to be honest and forthcoming, with their actions and their words and how they treat other people.
Yeah. There's this a couple of verses in the Bible that make me think about this. Philippians 2:3-4 says, "Don't be selfish. Don't try to impress others. Be humble, thinking of others as better than yourself. Don't look out only for your own interests, but take an interest in others too." And that verse goes on to talk about how that's actually modeling Jesus. And in that dynamic, other people feel our love for them. And if we're trying to impress and we try to put on that front or whatever, we're robbing that person of that love, and we're also robbing ourselves of a deeper connection and relationship with them. So it's so good. Awesome. All right. Well, how about transparency?
So I think being able to be transparent with somebody is kind of a byproduct of trust. In order to be transparent, you've got to maybe have some discernment.
Yeah.
And knowing how much access you're willing to give another person to your heart, your thoughts, whatever. Whatever's going on.
Yeah. I love this one. This one's it's one of my personal values is authenticity and transparency.
And non-judgment.
Yeah.
And can I trust myself or the people in my that I have close relationships with not to judge me when I make mistakes or when I slip up or whatever? Will they accept that and not be too harsh with me or whatever? I don't know.
Sure.
And accept my apology and help me, learn from that and move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really great. And I think that the idea of transparency can actually start even before something like that, like before a mess up or something. And it really is just allowing other people to see who you are from the get-go, like down to your bones. You know what I mean? What are your thoughts and your feelings and your likes and dislikes and all those things. And so often like that, there's a barrier to that just because we're afraid of, like you said, the judgment.
Right.
Yeah.
But aren't those the people you're attracted to? Those that are so willing to share their experiences with you and who they are and how they feel.
Yeah.
But they've probably gotten to that point having been judged at some point.
Right.
And having to come to terms with, being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Learning how to be vulnerable.
Yeah. There's a lot of courage required in that.
Absolutely.
Especially if you've experienced something like that, especially if you've been judged or like there are reasons why we throw up walls. And it takes a lot of faith to break them down. And it's like taking a step into the water before the sea parts,
Exactly. And trust, trust doesn't just happen, right? It's a process and it takes time and there are baby steps along the way that you have to take.
Yeah.
But it's so worth it.
So worth it. Yep. Awesome. Okay. Well, how about togetherness?
Well, I think togetherness, spending time with the people around you, the people that you have relationships with are the ones that really see who you are, right? And they actually view you in a more positive light than you probably view yourself. So like there's, Michelangelo was able to look at a slab of stone and see the beautiful human form on the inside of the stone. And we can kind of get that from the people that are in our lives, the positive messages that they send us or tell us and how they view us. We can maybe get a more authentic, positive view of who we are as a person.
I love that. So trust the people around you when they're speaking life and positivity in you, and don't knock that down.
Right. Oh, no, that's not true. Just embrace it because they really are seeing who you are.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Also, on that note, make sure that you're doing that with the people around you.
Absolutely.
I think that, this can go wrong. I know personally from my own personal experience how like negativity can creep into a scenario or a situation where you're in a tight family relationship and just kind of blow things up.
Right.
Hey, just jumping in right in the middle of this podcast episode to tell you about a resource that you need in your life. If you feel ever stuck in your faith, or if you feel like I want to grow my faith, but I just don't quite know what the steps are, we got a resource for you called Sticky Faith in a Slippery World. This world is changing and it's crazy and we all need something firm to stand on. And I wrote a book for you called Sticky Faith in a Slippery World. You can get your copy right now at the link in the description.
From your perspective, or like when you're coaching, how would you coach to turn the tide of negativity in a family setting? I personally have experienced family setting shifting from loving and encouraging one another into just a spin out of real negativity how would you coach to shift that in a family?
Well, unfortunately, we always tend to believe the negative, right? It's easier to believe the negative things that people say about us. And so when I work with individuals or with families, we try to change the narrative. And like for parents, catch your kids being good. Remember that? When you were a parent, did you ever do that? And call out all the positive things that you're seeing that your children are doing. And then with my clients, the they'll talk about something negative about themselves, and then I'll ask them, what's the evidence for that? And, most of the time they can't come up with any of it, and that's, it just takes practice to change those negative messages into positive ones.
That's awesome.
But again, it's important, like you said, speak positivity to other people. And so, I would encourage parents out there to embrace your kids and tell them as many positive messages as you can so that they start building that, the self-esteem.
Yeah. I remember making a decision as a parent with my kids not to pass down my own fears and issues. And my kids liked to, have you ever been on, I think it's at Multnomah Falls where you walk out onto that deck, and I could never do it because I'm terrified of heights. And it would freak me out to watch my kids do it, but I never stopped them from doing it because I wanted them to go out and to experience that and to beat that fear. It's the same thing, really, right?
Right.
You don't want to pass down your own negative self-image and views to your kids. You want them to experience all that positive stuff. So,
and kids generally have, as an infant, as a toddler, they think they're pretty cool, right?
Yeah.
And you don't want to stamp that out of them. So
Right.
let's help them just embrace that and keep sending them those positive messages so that they feel good about themselves.
Yeah, I love that too, because the idea of working on yourself as well, because it's hard to speak positivity out of negativity. So working on that for yourself and trying to change, shift that view of yourself so that you can speak positivity into other people. It starts with us, right?
It does, right? And recognizing your strengths and leaning into those and how you can use them.
Yeah, that's good stuff. All right. Well, how about track record? This one's huge.
It is, because you gotta come through. If you say you're going to do something, my goodness, people are counting on you to carry through. And if you're one of those people that says I'm going to do X, Y, and Z, and you never do X, Y, and Z, pretty soon nobody takes your word anymore, and you've lost some trust there.
Yeah. It makes me think of in the Bible, Jesus tells us, or somewhere in the Bible, I forget where it is, but it says your yes be yes and your no be no. People need to just be able to trust that what it is that you say is what you're going to do. Right. But you made mention before about the fact that this thing happens, the trust builds one step at a time. So, that just, it speaks volumes to me that even if you have created a space where you don't feel like people trust you, you can start right now to build that up.
Right. And be reliable.
Yeah.
Right. And it not only carrying through with what you're going to do, but knowing, if you're not going to be able to do something, to be able to say no. I'm sorry, I just can't do that.
Yeah. That's huge.
And that's hard to do, right?
Yeah, exactly. We hate seeing
because we don't want to disappoint anybody. But ultimately you do if you don't carry through.
Yeah. Yeah. And so and it's less of a disappointment for you to say that you can't do something when you can't do it.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think that one of the other things that Gabe talked about on Sunday was the fact that in order really to fall in line with all this stuff and to find the power or the whatever it is that we need to live this stuff out, we have to trust Jesus first, right? Yeah. We really have to trust God first. And immediately this makes me think of David in the Bible. The guy who is known as the man after God's own heart, And the thing about this guy is that he in everything that he did, he checked with God first. He checked with him to make sure that he was making the right moves. And when he didn't, it went terribly wrong. So I think that that's so incredibly valuable because in that example, we can see the fact that God gives us the ability to do even the hardest things, maybe say the no when we need to say the no, or to set the boundary and be able to respectfully communicate a boundary, or be able to go in and say, hey, I know that this didn't go the way that we planned it to go, but I'm going to give you a second chance because that's what God is telling me I need to do. Give the benefit of the doubt. He's the one that helps us to make shifts. This actually makes me think of a verse in Romans says, so dear brothers and sisters, I plead with you to give your bodies to God because of all he has done for you. Let them be a living and holy sacrifice. So we're sacrificing ourselves, the kind that God will find acceptable, that he will find acceptable. This is truly the way to worship him. So don't copy the behavior and the customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think, and then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect. Because of the privilege and authority God has given me, I give each of you this warning. Don't think that you're better than you really are. Be honest in your evaluation of yourselves. Do the TrustOMeter thing. And measuring yourself by the faith God has given us. So it is with Christ's body. We are many. So yeah, that's essentially the verse.
It's so good.
It's so good. And it just leans into the fact that in order to build trust in our families and our relationships, we have to start with trusting God, because he's the target. He's the, what it is that we're shooting for. So so good. Thank you so much for joining us, Stacy. It's so cool.
It was fun to be here.
Yeah, I love it. And if you don't mind sharing a little bit about you and what you do, if you're interested in doing that.
Sure. I work with Cascadia Behavioral Health, and right now I am working with children and families, and I get to go into a couple schools. So I go into a middle school and an elementary school and get to work with students there too. And
that's awesome.
Kids are my jam, so I'm loving what I get to do. So.
Sweet.
Yeah.
And you're working with kids here at Westside too, so that's cool. Cool. Well, thank you again so much. I love having you here, and thanks for sharing your wisdom.
Of course.
Cool. All right. If you haven't gotten a chance to, make sure that you check out Sunday's message on trust and healthy households. All right. We'll see you next week.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Midweek Motivation. To make sure you don't miss any content in the future, please subscribe, share, and if you enjoyed this, give us a like. And consider popping by a Westside service some weekend. You can find out more at westsidecommunitychurch.com.